Hello, Billy. How are you doing?
I'm tip top, Matthew.
What do they normally say? Do they normally say anything?
This is the review of death.
Yeah, roll the intro. Do we even explain the joke, or do we just let it linger?
Just let it linger.
Okay. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Season 2 of Wild and Ever. That's right, we managed to get an episode out within a century, which is pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah.
As you may be able to tell from Jean's fantastic getup, we are going to be talking about the 60th. Actually, do you want to tell them a bit about how you put the waistcoat together, because people might be curious?
Oh, what? You say that as if I went to great lengths to, piece it together. I just ordered it off a company.
I thought you did have to buy the fabric.
No, it's the
separately.
coat. No, the thing is, right, I have the coat fabric here because I want to get the coat made at some point. But I've not had the money to do such, so yeah. That's sitting, just needing to be done. But yeah, no, it's the actual fabric.
But wasn't the waistcoat done out of the original fabric? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the proper fabric. That was just done for a company called Magnolia Clothiers, and then the tie is just from eBay. I think the shirt is just a Primark shirt because I couldn't get the actual one. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no one cares about the shit. For me, I've got a 14 cosplay, which some of you may have seen. It's not as good as that. It's like an approximation. The waistcoats are like approximation of
something
like another suit.
It's the one I used to have.
The job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does the job, certainly. But yeah, as you can tell, we're talking about the 60th today. Jean hasn't really spoken about the 60th much online, to my knowledge.
No, I don't make
obviously
videos.
Obviously, about it, but in general, you don't really make them these days. So this is going to be interesting. Obviously, for me, I've spoken about it a fair bit more. It'd be weird if I hadn't. But I still have some things I want to say. So, what are your overall sort of thoughts, just generally?
Yeah, no, it's a bit of a mixed bag overall for me. It's I really liked bits. There were bits I wasn't so sure on. I think the execution of certain things could have been a lot tighter, as I'm sure we'll get into as we go on. But yeah, I mean, generally, I'd say I'm fairly positive looking back. I think these specials were a really good time.
Did it feel like it just sort of came and went for you? Because it does just sort of feel for me like it was here, and we were waiting for it. Yeah. We were building up, and there was so much build-up. There was so much anticipation for these specials, and then they just sort of happened, and that was it. Don't get me wrong. It's not really a fault of the episodes per se. It's just interesting how with such a long lead-in. I don't know.
I suppose it was just the fact that it was only the 3 episodes, and I guess not every one of them was this massive, spectacular thing. Which, which I don't mind. I'm not against, because I think one of the stronger of the episodes, Yonder, isn't this massive, grandiose piece, but it works because of that, because the actual ideas and character stuff is so strong.
I guess it's I think maybe it might just be a case of rose-tinted glasses when it comes to the 50th, and the way that was done. Not so much the episode itself, but more so I'm talking about just the spectacle around it, in so much as
culture around it. Yeah,
it was
definitely.
In cinemas. It was it had BBC idents with the clocks ticking and stuff like this, and you had all these little things that really made it feel like you were counting down to the nerd equivalent of Christmas. With this, there was idents and there was teasers and stuff, but obviously it didn't feel as big, which is understandable for a couple of reasons. Obviously, 60 isn't just not as big a number as 50. And also, as I've sort of said to you before, the show's just in a fundamentally different place to where it was in 2013.
Yeah, the thing is with the 50th, though, it also just had come off the back of, a series as well, whereas this, we had a year's gap, so it wouldn't have felt that long since, Name of the Doctor. I mean, we still got little things. We had,
that's the thing, I think.
Destination Scarrow and things like that.
Yes.
It was a little
I
fun.
think that's the thing. I think because 2013 had a, half series to accompany it, I guess it just felt like, oh my god, you can't move for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And the 60th did begin to encroach on that towards the end. Like I say, you had Liberation. Not Liberation, sorry, you did have Liberation. You had what you said, Destination Scarrow, Tales of the TARDIS. There was some good stuff in there. But they did feel very like, oh, and they're done. That's the anniversary for another 10 years, or maybe 15, because 70th anniversary doesn't have the same ring to it. It's like 75th. Anyway, but all that being said, I haven't really said what I thought of them overall. It's interesting. I think, obviously, I can say this now. Like, I'm very much prone to being prisoner of the moment. There have been there's one episode that hasn't sort of lived up to my initial impression of it, and there's another episode that has gotten better with time. And those of you who are regular viewers might know which is which. And there's one that I've just thought is fantastic throughout, which, spoilers, it's wildly old. You all know that. So, yeah, this is going to be quite an interesting one. Shall we start off with the Star Beast? Unless there's anything else you want to add in the pre-60th kind of...
No, we can just get into it. We can just get into the episode itself. So obviously the Star Beast is an adaptation from a comic. I hadn't read the comic going in before, so that was interesting.
I did, just because I wanted to do a video being like, here's the comic that it's based on.
Yeah.
Which I did do before.
I read it afterwards. It aired and then I read it afterwards. It's not the best adaptation, but I understand why, because it is obviously so focused on reintroducing these characters to the audience again.
I mean, the one thing I will give it is in terms of visually, they got the look down like pitch perfect when it comes to things like the meat and the Wrath Warriors and the direction as well. It looks like a comic book in a good way. It's quite a standard Doctor Who fare plot. You've got
it's sort of in a similar ballpark of like Partners in Crime. It's sort of like that.
Absolutely,
it's just a sort of light-hearted reintroductory Russell,
like Smith and Jones.
Opener. Yeah.
It's on that sort of wavelength, definitely. And so you've got two alien races they've got coming down. I think the real heart of this story is the Doctor and Donna and the Temple Nobles, which I will say right now are the highlight of the Star Beast for me, personally. I think
I agree.
The whole family clan are like what makes that episode so fun to watch for me, even though we will get into some of the issues I have with it and have sort of grown to have with it. I think as well, obviously I've mentioned this in a few places, but my impression of this story was naturally somewhat heightened by the fact that I saw, not only did I see it early, but I also met Russell that same night. So,
of course.
Adrenaline was high, excitement was high. I saw it 2 days, ahead of time. And I think coming off the previous era, my original impression was, wow, actual characters. And, the direction, not everyone's, 2 feet in front of the camera with their face, pressed up against it and, all that sort of stuff. On reflection, now that we've had a few episodes of RTD style again, I would definitely say, for me, the Star Beast is the weakest Russell has done so far for this
I completely agree with that.
That's not to say I dislike it, because I don't. I think, for one thing, I think the meat is incredible. I know we all sort of moved on to the Toymaker later on, but I do want to stress I think Miriam Margolyes absolutely nailed this part.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see the meat back.
I think that's another thing that lets down the Star Beast overall, is the fact that I think the meat is so good, and stuff like the Wrath Warriors, design-wise, we don't really get enough
they look great.
Them. Even the meat reveal, that was one thing that really let me down, because I really wanted that, treacle throughout the episode as you slowly build up. You're like, oh, okay, our crack's starting to show.
It certainly did feel like some of the core aspects of the story had to be compromised in order for it to be used in this way, in this story, because obviously you have to address the meta-crisis elephant in the room.
The pacing is a bit mad straight from the offset. Within the first 3 minutes, the Doctor's already landed, reunited with Donna, and seen a crashing ship.
I know some people will say, they just want them to get into the Doctor and Donna reuniting again. For me, I think I would have liked a little bit of build-up. Maybe he goes to see the new ship first, and then bumps into Donna on the way back. Just so you're like,
I get why it is done like that, because there really isn't time to do anything.
It's one of these where it's definitely as I said, kind of, you have to sacrifice some things in the adaptation. In some cases, I think that's for the best. For example, for those of you who haven't read the Star Beast comic, there's a subplot in which the Wrath Warriors implant a bomb in the Doctor. Tom Baker's Doctor is in the comic. They implant a bomb into his Doctor, so that, when he gets close to the meat, boom, the meat's dead. And I get why they would cut that in the sense of, Yes, I would get that. I get why they cut that though, because it would kind of undermine the
Yeah.
the Wrath Warriors are supposed to be the ones we're sympathetic towards. If they just put a bomb into newly regenerated David Tennant, people would be like, "Are we supposed to root for them?" Because I'm not. I just watched them put a bomb in David Tennant. No, so some things I understand why they were gotten rid of. I do have to wonder, and maybe I understand. Like, I appreciate that he's there. But, like, Fudge, who is a major part of the original story, is basically a non-entity in this, to the point where I wonder why they even bothered transitioning him over, because he's just sort of here.
Yeah, you could have easily just had Yasmin Finney, like, come across it, and nothing much would have changed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's cool to have, like, the perspective of the battles that we get.
Yeah,
from the perspective of someone on the ground, I suppose. But I feel like you can do that without having, a little side character. Like, I don't know, it just feels. It felt like that was a little bit like. I'm not even sure why you kept it. like it's a nice bit of fan service, but it's the sort of thing of like if you didn't.
Maybe it was just I guess. Maybe it was just a little bit of world building, just to be like, there's another character that Rose knows.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think it's just... I did just sort of look at it and go, I think maybe I'd have liked it if he did a little bit more, but then I suppose the difficulty is, how do you balance him with, like, the nobles,
really
which, let's face it, what the audience want to see. The audience want to see Donna, Sylvia, etc., Sean, and like, obviously Yasmin Finney as the new character. There's not really enough time to, like, sort of put in... And here's another guy who is also here.
Yeah.
So, yeah... I mean, he's fine.
The episode both starts off and ends really quickly. You literally have that moment of breathing, like when they're actually in the noble's house.
Speaking of when the episode starts, what are your thoughts on the pre-credits?
I understand why it's there. It doesn't feel 100% necessary, because I do feel like they go over all the grounds, like, throughout the episode itself. So yeah, I probably would have cut it, to be honest. Or at least just made it like an extra thing that showed, like, maybe on broadcast, but then not as part of the actual episodes. I don't know. It's a bit jarring. I'm
of two minds on this, because on the one hand, I see what you're saying. On the other, when I first watched this at the premiere, I watched it with my mum. And what was nice about it is that it did a sufficiently good enough job of explaining where the Doctor and Donna were at as people, so that I didn't have to sit there and go, right, her memory got wiped through time bollock shenanigans, and then if David Tennant runs into Catherine Tate, she'll explode, but not really, but kind of. Like,
that's what I mean.
It's kind of nice to just not have that.
I feel like the breadcrumbs are there though throughout the episodes. Like, you find that out anyway.
Yeah,
because you have to talk with like Shirley, with the Doctor and Shirley and stuff with Donna and her mum as well.
I mean, you could probably quite comfortably, if you wanted to, have it be a thing of like, when he's talking to Shirley, like you mentioned, have it be a case where they flash back then to a couple of bits, just so the audience definitely gets it. When he's basically recounting it, kind of thing. But
I feel like that would work. I mean, maybe a bit better. I
don't mind that it's there, because it meant that I didn't have to have any awkward conversation having to explain
I don't hate
how these two are together and why they're back. I understand why, from a long-time fan kind of perspective, it can sort of be a bit like, I know all this already. You're not telling me anything I don't already know. But yeah, I mean,
I just don't know why they full body shot it green screen. Like, it's just a bit awkward looking.
I get that they didn't want to reveal the TARDIS yet, but like, I don't know. I feel like there must have been somewhere else you could have plonked him, even if it was just like maybe stood outside the TARDIS somewhere, as in like the box was like, just arriving.
I think the green screen itself is fine if you want to do that. I think it's more just when you see his full body and he's standing on nothing.
I don't know, I think the stars are just a bit random as well. Like, it's just like, he's just floating in space.
Because he's celestial.
There he is. Yeah, that's another guy. That's another guy who comes in later. But what else do I want to talk about? Obviously, the
fucking screwdriver can now make fucking shields and shit.
We've got both of ours here. Yeah, it's interesting with the Sonic, because I've been thinking about this sort of, with hindsight now, I know that we know this Sonic literally barely gets used, like it gets used most in the Stardust. While Yonder has it completely absent, which I do think was to the benefit of that story. And then the giggle...
You don't even know why he has it, like where he got it from. That's not even, like, established.
No.
Because they cut it.
In hindsight, I do sort of wonder what the point was in sort of giving him this, or at least making such a big deal out of it in the Star Beast in the way that they did, because you get multiple shots of this being like, oh look, it's the new one. Bzzz.
So they could sell you the toy.
You get that really, you get that really like nice moment where Donna looks at the screwdriver as if she's thinking like, I've seen something like this before, but I can't quite place what it is. That's good. I love that shot. And apparently, like Phil Collinson fought to keep that shot in, and I'm glad they did because it's cool.
Nice
sort of build up to Donna's memory being uncovered. But yeah, the whole shield thing is bizarre because I mean, does shooting Sonic have the same functionality?
It's weird because I don't think it does, and I don't think they're going to do that. So it makes it more odd that they've like put that technology into a screwdriver that's only going to be seen like 3 times.
Why would you not put that in every mod? If you were the Doctor, like, why wouldn't you just
exactly?
Be like,
I'm glad. The thing is, I wouldn't. The thing is, I wouldn't like it going forward anyway because I think it takes a lot of the danger away from the Doctor if he can just make like hard surfaces out of nothing.
I mean, I do think, in fairness, they do somewhat of a good job of nerfing it in the Star Beast, in so much as it takes him time to not only draw out the shield, but he also has to like walk into the line of fire to place
I suppose, but like he essentially has like a magic light pen. Can he just make anything?
I will say, I do quite like the screen that he makes at the beginning of the Star Beast to like analyze the ship. That's cool. I wouldn't mind that sticking around. I quite like that.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of the time you see the Doctor.
Shields are a bit much.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the time you see the Doctor looking at the screwdriver, like, oh, I'm just reading the signals off my thing. You're like, there's nothing there, bro. You're looking at like a line.
There's nothing there. You're just looking at a bit of plastic. It's like, what are you doing, bro? It's not. So I mean, I like that. Should we talk a little bit about the Nobles? Because I want to say MVP of the episode for me personally. Sylvia Noble is like the MVP. I'm kind of sad that they weren't more prominent, at least maybe in the giggle, because like I felt that the Nobles really shone here, and it's just a reminder of like that thing that Russell does so well, which is the family dynamic, something that only got reiterated in Church on Ruby Road, where you see obviously he's not lost his touch with that at all, and the Nobles are arguably, in my opinion, his best family in terms of a companion family, the best one he's ever done. I love what they did with Sylvie. And we'll sort of come onto this when we come to talk about Rose, but the moment where she's like, oh, I get all clumsy when it comes to Rose and stuff, really nice bit of character development from her. She's not like chastised for it, but you can tell she's genuinely trying to do the right thing, and that's a big development for Sylvia, because Sylvia, prior to this, was a bit of a bitch. You know, there's no way around it. She was, you know, she wasn't exactly the nicest to Donna. Yeah. So to sort of see not only, you know, that kind of change with Rose, but also you can even see when Donna is talking about obviously feeling like she's missing something. I think it has led to Sylvia being a lot more sympathetic as well and protective of Donna, which is really nice. And it feels natural as well. It doesn't feel like it's come out of nowhere. It's like she's had to live with this secret for 15 years, keeping her Donna safe from any alien thing. It totally makes sense to me that she'd be more, you know, sort of accommodating by now. And the scene where Sylvia reunites with the Doctor is great, and she's just fuming to see him at the door. Love that. Wonderful stuff. And obviously you get the great scene of Dad's home. What's for tea? Tuna madras. Meet. Like, that stuff is just great.
Yeah, that was a really good comedy moment.
I love Sean as well. I love how Sean is just, like, almost just the opposite of Donna, where he's like, he's just down to earth. He just doesn't really... I suppose you'd have to be chill to, like, get with Donna. Like, you'd have to just be the chill one of the two. So I liked that. Initially I thought this was a bit, like, of a contrivance, but I do think it works. The lottery money. The lottery...
Yeah, I get that. How I think they go on about it a little bit too much, but, you sort of had to get it out of the way.
Yeah. Because otherwise they would not have been relatable, you know, remotely. No. But I did think it was a bit like... I don't mind the charity angle in the sense of, oh, it's the Doctor's subconscious being like, do good things with this money. Like, that makes sense. I just think all of it, like every single like penny, like you didn't put a little bit away, like.
Well, I mean,
just to be sure,
you would have thought, just some security money,
like a nest egg or something, just like a little like, oh, this is our retirement fund, or I don't know. But I mean, I get why they did it because they want the nobles to be relatable. But I do agree with you that they do bring it up quite a few number of times. It strikes me that Russell didn't want anyone going, "What happened to the lottery money?" So he went.
It's like you bring it up once, twice, maybe, and then you have that joke at the end where like Donna gets annoyed. But I feel like they bring it up like 4 or 5 times throughout, and you're like,
I think first establishing it with the Doctor in the taxi works. I'd also say it works when Donna is saying that she did it because it's the sort of thing he would have done, and then the final one. Those are the 3.
Yeah, the rule of thirds,
and that's already quite a few. I think it does get mentioned a couple more times on top of that, though, which did begin to feel a little bit, sort of like,
yes,
we get it, they lost their money. Should we talk a bit about Rose? Because I wanted to save this for sort of later on, because obviously, there's a lot of, I guess, discourse surrounding the ending of this episode and Rose's place within it. Probably should stress now, neither of us are trans, so this is not, we're not trying to speak on behalf of anyone with that experience. These are just how we view things, for what that's worth. But I thought the opening sort of 2/3 of this was really well done for the most part. In terms of, I really sympathised for Rose. I like as well that, this is going to sound weird, but like, when sometimes a character of, some sort of diverse background is introduced, and that's just kind of the whole character. You see it with like lazy American sitcoms where it'd be like, it's the gay best friend, and that's like the only character trait. I like with Rose that she feels 3-dimensional. She's making toys to help her parents, like, make a bit of money, which feels relatable because obviously I don't make toys, but like I make YouTube videos. Like it's a similar sort of thing.
You make videos to keep the family going.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm like Charlie Bucket's dad, except rather than working at a toothpaste factory, I'm just there, like, just at a computer, like, yeah, I'm helping the family. Anyway, what were we talking about? Yeah, no, it felt relatable to me that she made toys in the age of like Etsy and stuff. Like that makes perfect sense to me. She's very creatively minded. I thought the scene of her being dead named was really well done. I know some people have said that felt a bit too, I guess, what's the word? Like, some people said it's too exaggerated, but honestly, I've seen people do stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's needed. I think it's needed to really hammer home the fact that this does happen.
The framing of Donna as the protective parent, it makes so much sense. In a lot of ways, it reminded me of my own mum, to a certain degree, when she's saying, like, I would burn down the world for you, darling. Anyone has a go, I will descend. Like, that makes perfect sense for Donna Noble to be a really fiery protective parent. I can imagine her, during, like, parents' evenings, if the teachers say anything out of line, she just goes nuts. Like, I can totally picture that. Or like, if there's a bully at school or something, she'd just be there. Like, I can totally just picture that in my head. I gotta put this Sonic down. Yeah. So I really like that. I think that really works for Donna. I think her as a mum makes so much sense, weirdly. Because I think with some companions, you almost can't imagine it. Like, I almost can't imagine Rose with a kid somehow. But, like, Donna makes sense in my head.
Yeah.
Like,
no, she is quite mummy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, oh, God, that's going to be taken out of context on Twitter, isn't it? The whole mother thing on Twitter. Anyway.
Well, it is now. You've made it a thing.
Yeah, good point. Another thing I want to briefly touch on, and we'll probably touch on it a bit more, very end of the episode, before we get into, I guess, like, 2 of the major things that I want to talk about here. Oh, actually, before we do that, Shirley Ann Bingham, Reese Madley, new character, unit character. I like her a lot, as you know. Yeah. I really enjoy her. She's such a... Okay, here's the thing. I've never been a big fan of New Who unit for the most part, and she is such a breath of fresh air from the Osgoods of the world. She is such a breath of fresh air from the, get it? I'm a fan insert. Like, she's just a person who, like, doesn't actually think that much of the Doctor, because they're used to the Doctor cropping up because they're unit.
Yeah, I've missed that. I've missed that with like unit dynamics.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they don't like worship the Doctor.
Because
Because even Kate sort of like, I don't know, looks up to the Doctor.
Deifies him a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the whole like President of the World stuff as well. Which we get a little bit of a nod to in the giggle. But I like with Shirley, she doesn't really think the Doctor's all that. I think that's refreshing after years of like, oh my god, you're the Doctor. I find that very refreshing. I like as well that they establish in this one of my favorite little details they establish is that they've got sort of an idea of the Doctor's chronology, so they know what not to say to certain Doctors.
Yeah.
So that the timeline doesn't mess up, which makes you ask, who at Unit is in charge of putting that together? Because they must be driven insane.
Can you think about that?
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, can you imagine trying to sit there like, this one comes first, oh, but that one came back in time, but he's got a time machine, so he's sort of poking the dots everywhere, like, which ones?
Do you think that 14 is fuck that for them now? They're like, shit, every time Tennant shows up now, they're like, oh, what can we say to him? What can't we?
They're never sure which one. They're never sure.
Yeah.
I guess maybe they could tell by the difference in age, I don't know. But then again...
Yeah.
I don't know. Or costume, maybe? Or if, like, he shows up with the nobles, like, then maybe, I guess, they'd be like, oh, you're the one who's living with them. Which we'll get to. But yeah, no, I really like Shirley. She's a breath of fresh air for me. I want to see, obviously she's great in the giggle as well. I'm happy to see more of it. Definitely prefer it to Osgood. I'm quite happy to leave Osgood in the past. I feel like
I don't hate Osgood.
In this section.
Osgood's fine.
I just much prefer Ruth Medley's.
I mean, yeah, no, it is good having an actual character over like reference, but like I didn't hate Osgood. She was.
Get it? I'm wearing the scarf. It's like,
yeah,
I'm wearing the scarf like you. I'm wearing the question mark. It's like she's just a character which I like. Yeah, and I think she gets some good stuff in the giggle as well. So the two things I think we should probably talk about. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about the trans rep in this episode with Yasmin Finney. As I said, I think the likes of the dead naming scene of, in my opinion at least, for what it's worth, are done really, really well. The two moments that I think see the most criticism, and
it's the pronouns line with beep the meep, and then the end.
Yes. So those are the two I was going to talk about. So the pronouns line, I have to be honest. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't actually mind the line. However, I can totally see why it comes across as a bit, how do you do, fellow kids?
Yeah.
In a way. Do you know what I mean? It can come across as a bit like, oh yeah, an old man's definitely written this. But then I have heard from some trans folks that they do say that, so I don't know. But, I mean, I can totally see why some people would go a bit boomery. But I also don't think it's like the end of the world, like I saw people talking about.
I think it's a little bit boomery, but I think the payoff of like one you're establishing like the pronouns thing in general, but secondly, it's like played off as like a joke anyway. It's set up to like the like definite article joke, and you're like, oh yeah,
I'm always the meat.
Yeah,
like the doctor. Yeah, it works. I don't mind that too much. Could you say it's a bit heavy-handed, possibly? But like, I think I don't really have.
I think Doctor Who needs to be heavy-handed sometimes, though. I think it's refreshing.
With this subject matter,
coming off of like.
I think with this subject matter,
just say
I think with this subject matter, like you don't want to leave ambiguity as well. Like you want to make it clear this is our stance, kind of thing. So I do understand that. That doesn't bother me too much. I think, should we get into the ending? Because I know that we've sort of been jumping around in this. But I feel like we've talked about a lot of the major things.
That is where most of my problems lie with this episode, is the ending. You were saying earlier,
my other main criticism is what you said earlier, how I wish Beep's revealed, because we all know Beep turns out to be evil at this point. Spoilers if you've for some reason not already seen the Star Beast, which
the thing is, it's already given up to the audience who are watching this for the first time that Beep is evil by the fact that his ship is like hypnotized the unit guards before he even reveals that he's evil. So you're like, oh, come on.
Well, to be fair, they try and do a bit of that, don't they, when they're doing the courtroom scene with the Doctor, which I do really enjoy that scene. God knows where he got the barrister's cap from, but
that was just in his pocket. That just regenerated with him.
It's just there, yeah. So I like that scene, but I do think I'd have liked a bit more build-up. I mean, they do try and pass it off as like, oh, were they trying to hurt you, the meep, or save you? But it's pretty obvious by that point that it was the latter. But yeah, so basically, the ship's dagger drive, which is what powers it, but it like in order for the ship to take off, it has to like plunge into the center of the Earth and basically use it as fuel, essentially. And if it does that, London will burn up, and etc., etc. Big stakes. So we have at the moment on the ship where the Doctor's like, oh, I can't get to the rest of the controls without, Donna doing something, because Donna followed him in, and he reactivates the meta crisis. I will say, love this scene, and also just want to give a quick shout out because we haven't spoken about it yet. The music score in all three of these specials is fantastic. I love the little.
Yeah, I was waiting for Word Boy Yonder to bring it up, but yeah.
I only brought it up because I like that little motif of I Am the Doctor when she's got the meta crisis back. I think that's just a really cool. I think that's just a cool little way of going, oh yeah, the Doctor is back in it with like the Doctor's arguably, other than the theme, the Doctor's most iconic piece of music. I think that is nice. So yeah, there's a big happy moment. She gets the meta crisis back, but then she dies. Also, there's those weird like Winter Soldier activation lines. I still don't know what.
Yeah, he just sort of says...
He's like Sparrow, Clifftop, Andante, Mexico. Yeah. It's just words. It's like, what do they mean? I don't know, maybe there is a deeper meaning to them that I've
Russell
not
probably
up on,
has, Russell probably has it written down. He probably has, like, the backstory and, like, there's, like, hidden meanings behind all of them that will all secretly be revealed at some point.
Well, I originally thought it was, like, a Doctor's wife.
I saw that
because there's that whole thing of like.
I thought it was going to be references to like past adventures or things that would trigger certain memories, but
because it was like, what was it? Like what was it in the Doctor's Wife? Like I think they even used a couple of the same words,
and stuff like that.
Yeah, petrichor and the smell of rain, or whatever it is, like that sort of stuff.
Petrichor is. Yeah.
Oh right, okay, yeah. I knew that. I didn't. Anyway, so the what do you call it? The memories get reactivated, but Donna dies. But she doesn't, because it's revealed that the Met Crisis gets passed down to Rose. Now that, in isolation, I think is perfectly fine. And the fact that, the reason her toys resemble monsters we've seen is because she has a bit of the Doctor's memories in her.
I have a little problem with the toy thing, and it's the fact that the toys they show in the reveal feels like a little bit of a cheat. Because we don't see, like, any of the toys they show in that scene in the background of, like, those first shots. And I think it would have been nice far more clever. Yeah. Because that sort of felt like a bit of a cheat.
I don't know, we do see the holding the devilly looking one. And we see, I think, the squid looking one. But I agree with you, it'd be nice if they were more prominent. The one thing that baffles me about that is, like, the shed is like the TARDIS is like, is it?
Yeah, that was a bit of a stretch. It's blue.
It's a blue shed, like and it doesn't even look that blue in the way they've lit it. It sort of looks dark. So yeah, that was a bit of a stretch, but it's revealed that she has some of the memories, which is why Donna doesn't die, which I think is perfectly fine. The clunk, if we can call it that, comes in with the context for those the three of you watching that don't know. Donna's like final words before breaking down and memory being wiped is binary, 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 binary. That's her final line. So it gets like a fanfare, reiteration in this scene where she goes binary, 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 and then she explodes. Which I always found a bit weird because it's like they weren't ever significant words. They just sort of happened to be the thing she said last.
It's so they can put the little non-binary.
Yeah, well, this is what I'm getting to. So they have basically Rose be the fitting piece of the puzzle because, she kind of defies the gender binary of male, female, because and this is where I think it gets a bit muddled because she's not established as non-binary in this.
I think she is.
What?
Is
she?
They, them, yeah. Like,
what?
I guess female presenting? I mean, it's never outwardly said that, like, maybe she just goes by, like, she, they pronouns. Like, I'm not 100% sure, but,
maybe.
like, yeah.
I don't know, it feels a bit it feels a bit muddled a bit. It's like I would have liked a bit of clarification on that. And I think just kind of the thing that baffles me about it the most is the sort of end scene where you have Rose being like, now I know now I feel like I'm finally me. It's like, is the meta crisis the reason she's trans? Like,
yeah, it's sort of hard. That's not the problem I have with it. I do think that's
although
a bit.
That is another.
That's
yeah,
a
it's
bit
a bit
sort
like.
of. Yeah, I also think Russell, like, originally, like, the dead name meaning doctor is a bit. You didn't have to do that, Russell.
You didn't have to say that. Yeah, that was weird. What was the other thing you were going to say?
Well, I guess the whole, like, them being non-binary and stuff like that. I think it's then when you turn that around on the doctor and the male presenting Time Lord line.
Yes.
That then feels
I was
really out
of
of. That feels
a
lot more now out of place, especially because it's kind of established that like this Donna, like, she knows what the doctor has been through since, so knows that the doctor has been a woman.
Yeah.
So you're like,
that's the thing. Is it the case that just when, like, what do you call it? When the doctor just stops being a woman, he just completely, all of his experiences of that just become null and void? Because that's a weird message to send.
Yeah.
I also have seen people say it's a bit of a weird message to send to, like, say, trans men in the audience, to be like, well, you're not female presenting anymore.
Well, yeah, it's weird, because the message was essentially established the doctor is neither male or female. They're like both or neither or whatever. So it's kind of like, okay, we're removing gender from the doctor, like, as
which
a
has
whole.
Been established before with, like, Capaldi being like, Time Lords.
Yeah.
Their concept of gender is billions of years beyond your obsessions, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
So then why focus on the gender to make a dig?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It felt a little bit. I'm not like a Stephen Moffat basher, but it did feel like the sort of joke they'd maybe make in his era.
Yeah.
Sort of come across progressive.
It did feel dated. It felt like dated. It felt like, what old men think feminism is. Does that make sense? Like, see, we can let go of things. Take that, man. And it's like, all right. And it's like, I'm not saying this is like as a man, I'm deeply upset. Like, I'm not. I don't care.
I did. I did hear.
I'm also just sort of baffled by it from the sense of he was a woman like 5 minutes ago. Do you not think, does that just not count anymore?
I mean, I've heard a reading that, like, it's specifically for David Tennant in the sense of, like, he didn't want to go, like, he didn't want to let go of this face.
You could change the line so it was just something you never understood. Just let it go. That would make more sense. Cut the male presenting Time Lord out, then it'd be like, okay, they're talking about Tennant's version. Because Tennant never could let go. He could never, he could never let go of those feelings. That would make some sense. But
it just felt a bit like big magic button. We have to get this out of the way. We've done it now. It's
especially weird because it's a shame we're not a woman anymore because she never understood. And it's like 13 never let anything go in her whole life. She kept all every single piece of trauma and she just held them away. Like, she did not let things go in the slightest. I know obviously Donna doesn't know that, but it's just funny with hindsight. That's like, I think I've seen a lot of people say, they're emasculating David Tennant. They hate men. It's like, well, it's obviously not that because he's just three specials and he's our hero. No one's being like, he's a terrible guy. But I do get why people are a bit like, it just feels a bit out of place and a bit unnecessary. It's like, did we need? What was the need? And I wasn't
that pressed over it. I was just sort of like, this joke didn't land.
But I think what makes it worse is that it's kind of, it's not just a joke, it's also the resolution to the meta crisis.
A little bit, yeah.
It's because that's
I mean, that line isn't necessarily the resolution, it's just the letting it go that ties into the whole thing.
The idea of letting it go.
The biggest problem with the letting it go thing is that it's never actually established how they can let it go. Like, why is it so easy? I think if you just had it, like, because Donna is now giving birth and that split it, that makes it easier to, like, I don't know, like, get rid of or whatever. But they just kind of go,
clunky.
Could Donna always do this? Could she have always just let it go?
Yeah, could she have always just gone, I don't really feel like having this anymore? Like, because that's my issue with it, is what I'm trying to get to, is not only, like, obviously, we talked about the male Time Lord line being a bit out of place, but the idea that just this arc that we've been following for 15 years, like the meta crisis, can just be let go of so easily. I don't like it.
I feel like
I think at least with the passing down, it's like, okay, she has a child for that to happen. Makes sense. But the letting it go thing feels so, I don't want to say it cheap, but kind of a cop out. It kind of feels a bit like, it's giving me vibes of Series 3, the Earth gets reversed vibes, And it's like, obviously, it's not the worst thing in the world because you have to get rid of the meta crisis in some capacity for this story to exist. I'd accepted that, and I think a lot of people had. I think I'd have just liked it to go out with a bit more fanfare. Like, I think the idea that it just, it's gone.
I get that, yeah. I also get why they did it that way. It's just, it is just disappointing. A part of me does feel like, would anything have been disappointing though? Like, could you really,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Like, could you really give a satisfactory, conclusion to this thing that's, because that
honestly,
series 4,
if they'd just left it at what you said with,
good.
She had a kid and that, made the energy, manageable and it got, processed it out of their systems or something.
I think it'd be a lot less clunky.
Fine. Would have worked fine for me. And you still could have Rose Save the Day. You could even still have, some of the stuff with, I don't know. There's just some mixed messaging, and obviously with the meta crisis as well, I did want a bit more of just more of a reason beyond magic, which is essentially what it is.
Yeah, because even the cracks in the road just perfectly seal up again.
Oh yeah, there's that as well. Yeah, there's that as well.
That's just I would have liked even if there's still a bit of damage, maybe when we see Earth again in the giggle, they're still repairing stuff or whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think one of the things, because obviously overall I do still enjoy this episode. It's this is the one that has gone down in my estimation. It started off as an 8 when I first saw it. Now it's gone down to a 7.
Yeah, I'd give it a 6.5, maybe a 7.
Yeah.
It's still really strong. I think the character stuff is so good that it's still up there.
It lifts up a lot of these moments that we're not as keen on. Particularly
it's the plot stuff that's it's a little bit weak.
All the stuff with the noble family together, I think, is fantastic. I think 14's really well characterized.
All the performances are great throughout.
I like the new unit crew. The music and direction are all
looks beautiful.
It's just some of the decisions made slightly confused me in hindsight. Because I'm sort of because we've gone to such great lengths to be the Doctor can be anyone, and then you have Abbott, you're a man though, lol. It's it just feels a bit random. I don't know. It's but also we see the new TARDIS at the end of this, and it's a stunner.
Yeah,
a beauty.
I really
love
like
it so much.
Arguably, be my wife.
I mean, yeah, for me it might be my favorite New Who set. I mean, it's
you ranked them, didn't you? You put it on.
I did put it number 1. Yeah, the thing is, I did, but I think I've done that with the proviso that it gets added to in the future, sort of thing.
Okay.
So it's if it doesn't get added to, it might go down. But for now, I know I'm sort of working on not only what it is, but also the potential of it. What it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I love that set. That set's wonderful. Overall, I still really enjoy this. The Meep is really solid. I do wish there's more time to sort of do the reveal and a bit of stuff with the Wrath Warriors. I love the Nobles. It's just a couple of the decisions that don't quite land for me with this one. And I think, given what we would go on to see, with hindsight, it just comes across as a little bit weaker, but still solid. Shall we move on to episode 2?
Yes. Wild Blue Yonder. No, I think we pretty much covered everything we wanted to.
The 3.
Yeah.
Which is not a secret to anyone. The one thing I'll get out of the way, I think we should get it out of the way first. The opening scene. I still think it's the weakest scene of the episode, but I'll give it this. In hindsight, they have stuck to the Merity thing.
I don't mind it. I get why it's there as well. I think it's sort of the light before the storm, isn't it?
Yes.
It's more, here's a little fun comedic bit before we get into the really deep, heavy character stuff.
Yes, 100%.
I think it also has a little bit of setup with the whole people believing two different things that later comes up as well.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely
so it definitely has its purpose.
Why it's there.
I get why people are critical of it.
I'm just not overly keen on the scene. I will say though, don't really give a damn about Isaac Newton. I know that was
who
a big
cares?
talking point for people. It's like, this isn't the heightened Doctor Who reality where, like, you know, Queen Victoria fought werewolves. I don't really know why we're treating it as like a historically accurate source all of a sudden. William Shakespeare looked hot in Shakespeare Code, and I don't think he really did. I mean, he didn't really look like that in the paintings we have of William. You know what I mean? Like, it's never been fully accurate, so I don't know why that's such a sticking point for people.
Because racism.
Well, yeah, that's a factor, unfortunately. But anyway, when the plot really starts, I have to say, I think this is one of the best Doctor Who episodes we've had in a very long time. Because conceptually, it's so simple. It's basically just Doctor and Donna trapped on a ship, and they're basically being stalked by an entity who's trying to escape, and slowly takes on their form in order to do so, because it knows the TARDIS will return for them after it.
It's your classic base under siege story. But, like, you've then taken the TARDIS and the sonic screwdriver out of the picture as well.
Which I loved and was so refreshing after 5 years of, this seems to be happening. Oh, yes. It's like, that was so refreshing. And even with the Star Beast as well, like you were saying with the Shield, it was so refreshing to see a nerfed Doctor. No TARDIS, no Sonic, nothing. And I liked as well, you know, sort of skipping ahead a little, with the Giggle you have that as well, where that stuff just doesn't work on him. I hope we see more of that. But yeah, but it does make the idea of introducing this new Sonic even weirder in hindsight, because like he's not in one of the episodes. Anyway, so the TARDIS disappears without them, and they have to basically, you know, that's exploring the ship, and this entity slowly takes on their form in order to escape the universe. And what I love about this is a couple of things. I love the setting of they're outside the universe, because
they're at the edge of the universe.
The edge of the universe, sorry, yeah. And like, just what a wonderful sort of location for a story, just generally. Like, that's just such an inspired kind of location. I mean, we've kind of done a little bit of it with, again, the Doctor's wife. You know, when they're sort of...
Yeah, that's like, they sort of fell out of the universe,
Yeah. But, like, what I like about it is, I think just the atmosphere of it is dripping. The music, again, I know you wanted to bring this up.
The atmosphere, the music is brilliant throughout.
This might be one of my favourite Murray scores, unironically. Like,
I agree, It's so eerie.
The sort of
particularly
and the kind of classic kind of sounds, it really works. But it also has the moments of grandeur that you'd want from a Murray score as well, sort of towards the end when they're running away from the copies, and you have that like moment of tension. It's got all the right bits. I mean, that one shot, and, you know, I think everyone sort of praised this shot, but the one shot of the drone flying around the ship looks beautiful. Like, that's...
when they're looking
I know there are...
And the music sting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I'm watching, like, an Apollo film or something. It's like, or like, you know, I don't know, just like some sort of space movie. It's like space opera. It's really, really good. You know, really liked that. I know some people do, kind of have their issues with some of the CG in this.
I sort of like it because I think from the offset, you feel like there's something off as soon as they go through that door. You're like, it's almost that uncanny valley feeling of something's not quite right here. Like the environment it feels wrong, but like I don't think it looks bad. I think you can tell definitely at certain points that they're on green screen, particularly when they're like running away from things.
Absolutely, I think it's just the one big corridor. To be honest, I don't mind that the knot things look a bit weird at points with the jaw. And
but I think that's the point. Like,
because that's exactly the point of them. I think my one thing, what I'd have done if I had like editorial approval on this, which I never will, but if I did, I'd have just had the main corridor they walk through be a little bit darker lit. So that some of the green screen isn't as obvious, and also it makes it a bit more eerie.
I know you've said that. I kind of like it being quite overly lit, because I think it gives this like false sense of security.
That's also fair enough. I think it might have just hidden some of the green screen.
I think that's fair, but especially when the walls start moving around and stuff. I think the actual chambers look lovely with the blue lighting and like the orange lighting. That stuff looks gorgeous.
Yeah, with the base repetition filaments, or whatever they are, which is just sci-fi words. Also wanted to say, one thing I love about this story, kind of in complete contrast to the Starbeast, is how everything to get to the conclusion is set up really, really well. And it feels like you're rewarded as an audience member for picking up on these things. So you're picking up on things like the countdown in the alien language. You're picking up on things like, why is the robot taking one step at a time? What's that clanging on the ship? It feels like, and it's you're figuring those things out along with the characters. I really, really liked it. This might be, in my opinion, one of like Russell's tightest scripts, or at least, it's his tightest script so far. Probably even just in general, like I don't feel like there's really any bloat in this, to be honest. Everything feels like exactly where it should be once you get onto that ship. In my opinion, I want to say as well, I think what makes this episode great is we knew nothing about this one going in, and that created a lot of kind of higher expectation for more fan service and stuff. For me, this was one of the rare times with recent Doctor Who, because of the nature of what I do online, I'm sort of in the know about episodes before they come out. With this one, because it had been kept so deliberately, like, secret and sort of in the corner, I had no idea. So when you have the reveal of, oh my god, they're not actually talking to each other, they're separate people, I was genuinely shocked at that because I didn't know that's what they were going to do at all. So I was taken aback by it. And I mean, the camera work in that scene alone is just chef's kiss. It's fantastic. Just the way David Tennant and Catherine Tate act those scenes out. David Tennant in particular, when the way he sort of slumps down behind Donna, sort of very kind of slowly. It's like, this feels wrong somehow.
It's weird. Not think David Tennant just feels dead behind the eyes.
Yeah, when he's staring at people, it's like there's no soul in his eyes. I don't know how he did it, but it's so well done. And Donna, I love the way she does it as well. What's interesting about Donna's thing is, obviously Donna is very argumentative, kind of. She'll always have a snarky response or a quip. So the thing that ticked me off to something being wrong wasn't with Tennant. It was when Donna said something like, I did what you asked. It's like, that's not what Donna would say. That's not something Donna would say. And in a lesser writer, it would just be a weird moment, a weird out of character moment. But you're supposed to pick up on that.
Yeah.
And I mean, actually, it's one thing I didn't mention at the Star Beast as well is you get that again with, do you know the lasers on the taxi?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like in most other eras, we'd be like, why did the lasers do nothing to the taxi? But in that story, that's deliberate. You're supposed to think that, and you're supposed to... I think that's something I really like about these specials throughout, is it feels like it rewards an audience for keeping attention, which I like. I like a lot. These specials do feel rewarding to me in that way. But yeah, so I love that with Donna, like how she's just so deadpan in contrast to how Donna normally is. She's so blunt by contrast. And I mean, all the stuff with the double knees and the my arms are too long. I mean, what an iconic phrase. That is right up there with Are You My Mummy or, Who Turned Out the Lights. It's that sort of thing. It's like the sort of thing that I can imagine kids acting out like their hands growing. And
that's
all
the thing.
this
I saw
of
people
stuff.
referencing it that I didn't even knew what Doctor Who was.
Yeah.
Like, it was all over Facebook and stuff. Like, my arms are too long. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was kind of that one of those, like, water cooler Doctor Who moments of, like, did you see Doctor Who last night? Did you see, like, they had these weird copies and, like, it was really, really good, really atmospheric? Yeah. I think that's one of the best things the 60th has given me is just a story that I think will stand the test of time as one of New Who's highest moments, or maybe not highest moments, but at least up there.
I think in terms of what it does with the characters and how much it strips away at both of them, yeah, definitely.
That's another thing I want to talk about as well. What they do with the Doctor, because we sort of take for granted now that this was what kind of established the status quo, because obviously there was a big question before these specials came out of how was the Chris Chibnall elephant in the room going to be addressed.
Yeah.
Some people thought, is it going to be ignored? Is it going to be, addressed directly? Like, is it going to be kind of an ongoing storyline going forward? Like, how is this going to be done? And you get that scene where Donna goes, but you're not from Gallifrey, or fake Donna, because you're not from Gallifrey. And you get that whole moment where Tennant's just so emotionally raw, and he finally feels he can open up to someone about everything he's been through. And psych, it's a fake Donna.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Love that. And
Like, I love the contrast from like 14 to 10 as well, like how just emotionally vulnerable and open 14 is compared to Tennant, who was a lot more
He's a broken man by comparison.
Yeah. Like that scene where he just lets out his anger afterwards. It's like,
which is
why does it have to be this?
Like, weird that like people have said that the decision in the Giggle sort of comes out of nowhere. It's like, nah, the Wildly Yonder, if you watch, he is done. He thinks he can finally open up. And if you look at his face the moment he realizes it wasn't, he got taken, advantage of for doing that, he's devastated.
Defeated,
like he's like completely destitute. But what I love about that scene is what they did with the flux and the time chart. Like, this whole reframing of the Doctor feels some level of responsibility over the flux, despite him not even doing it. Like, obviously it was done to get rid of them, but he still feels guilt over the fact that half the universe is gone. And it just kind of shows that the Doctor can't give themselves a break even for something they didn't do. And I think it works. And it made me feel more for Flux in 2 sentences than all of Flux did. I felt like I finally understood what the point of it was.
Well, I mean, when you see 13 and Eve of the Dalek, she doesn't seem to have any weight. Yeah. She's like, yeah.
Anyway, that happens. It's like, oh, okay. But like, I just love the reframing of it, and just kind of this idea that the Doctor's just had one thing after another constantly, that it's just too much for him at this stage. I like that a lot, because life be like that sometimes. And, when you look at long-running shows, typically they'll reset their characters to a form of, like, status quo and it'll never really be addressed again. My immediate thought is something like The Simpsons, right? The Simpsons can't remember all the traumatic shit that have happened in numerous episodes where some of them have nearly died and stuff, because it's got to reset to the status quo by the end, right? And to a certain extent, I feel like that's kind of what happened with 13-0, where some changes are allowed to stick as part of an arc, but generally, it feels like every character sort of resets to where they were, for the most part. What I like about this is that it's saying, no, just because we're a long-running show doesn't mean that these things don't have impact. Just because it's a different team, the show's still the same. And I liked that. I liked the way they did it in the end. I don't even like the Timeless Shard or Flux. But I think just the way it was handled and showing it as part of the Doctor's emotional vulnerability at this stage, I think
it made it feel important. This gave it weight.
Exactly, yeah. I also like the contrast of, because Donna's quite confident in her scene by contrast, but the Doctor is just devastated. Liked that, because normally it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Where Donna's like, oh god, I don't know what to do, and the Doctor's like, I've got this. In this case, it was completely opposite. Another scene I love, the scene where he's discussing what he thinks might happen to the TARDIS once it disappears away, where he's like, oh, they might build a city around it, and they'll like worship it in 1,000 years. Love that whole bit of dialogue, very doctory, very like just beautiful. The whole this episode, I just love it. If you can already tell, it's just dripping with Doctor Who goodness. Great lines, great concepts, great score, great direction. I love the art direction as well. Even like if you watch the Unleashed thing, the language of the people is supposed to look like horse.
That's really cool. Yeah,
carvings, like how they would use their hoofs, because obviously the captain of the ship, we find out, killed herself in order so that the Not Things couldn't take the ship, and copy her to take the ship, sorry. And we find out that she's a horse lady, which is interesting. But yeah, like so much of this is just so creative and inventive and good. And I can't sing this episode's praises enough. I think Wildly Yonder alone makes the 60th worth it for me.
Yeah, it's like, just proper good Doctor Who. And it's weird to see people say that this is the filler one, this was the waste of time one. Where it's like, there was no point bringing back, like, Tennant and Tate not to do something like this. Like, I think we really needed this. I also feel
it's just fundamental in understanding where the Doctor's head is at going into the Giggle as well.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like, I think you really needed this. Like, this was a crucial element to properly see where these characters are.
Utopia isn't necessary. We could just skip to, like...
Yeah.
last of the time. It's like, no, you need the.
Also, one of the best players. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but it feels the same because it's not spectacly enough. You know, it's like I don't think everything needs to be just because.
No, but Bestie, one of the not things should have turned into Matt Smith.
Yeah, that's like I'm so glad they restrained themselves in that way because it just wouldn't have
worked. It wouldn't have made sense. Like, there's no Donna has no emotional attachment to Peter Capaldi showing up. Like, it would have just been like, oh, okay.
It would have felt hollow, and it would have destroyed any sense of tension the episode had because you'd be there like, oh my god, the Doctor just appeared.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have worked. I love that the Doctor gets the wrong Donna.
Yeah, I really like that, yeah.
That shows as well, like, even just further proof to the Doctor that, oh, fuck, I can never get anything right. You know, in hindsight, love that. Love the
I wish they'd gone a bit further with it, but, yeah.
I kind of understand why they didn't, because you don't want a massive rift developing between the two characters.
Of course, yeah.
Just before
I do find it funny that the Doctor just has, like, a button on his console that makes that ramp go up, though. That was a bit Looney Tunes, but...
Yeah. I mean, I guess you remembered, like, what was it, the Dalek coming in and, like, parting the ways. I imagine that'd be quite handy if that ever happened again. Just, bye! And I guess as well, I mean, the 13 TARDIS got invaded a lot, thinking about it.
True.
Doom and Zalian and a couple of the others. So, like, just, whoops! Bye!
Tentacle thing from Orphan 55 that's still in there.
Final thing we should probably talk about, Wilfred. What a lovely tribute at the end.
That was a really nice surprise.
If you wanted the anniversary treat beyond just Tent and Tate together, which I think is enough in of itself, but you've got Wilfred at the very end. Surely that's like a reward in itself.
Oh yeah.
Seeing Bernard Cribbin's final performance. And what I love about it is, it's not made into like a big thing. It's just a nice reunion. Do you know what I mean? Like they could have so easily made it like a, oh, you know, this is a really emotional goodbye sort of thing, like, you know what I mean? They could have bigged it up, obviously.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they didn't intend it to be the goodbye.
No, but what I'm saying is, it could have very easily sort of, I mean...
It still is emotional. I think the music swells, like, they hug.
I guess what I'm saying is, because it leads into the cliffhanger, it doesn't feel like...
Yeah, it's undercut quite quickly.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's made too big, which I quite like, in a sense. Because Wilfred was always quite a
understated
character. You know, he first met the Doctor randomly at like a sort of vending shop
selling papers,
Damned, you know, like, so I quite like the idea that he was just camping out waiting for the Doctor and that was it. You know, I think that works for Wilf. And I mean the emotion Bernard Cribbins brings to that and everything. And I mean the cliffhanger is incredible as well, you know, with Earth going crazy due to the giggle, and the music being very years and years. I cannot sing the praises of this episode enough. I think it is, in my opinion, one of the best things Doctor's done in about a decade.
Yeah.
And I want more episodes like this, Russell, please. Give us a couple of these for Shooty and we're on to a winning era.
I'd love to see Shooty take on something like this.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I guess you'd probably have to wait until they're a bit more established to do this. So, because like, I think one of the reasons why this works as well as it does is because of how well we know the Doctor and Donna
these characters for like 15 or so years.
But still, it really works. And I mean, that's another thing. I forgot to even mention this. The whole idea of like weaponizing the Doctor. Don't think the one thing the Doctor always does.
Yeah,
like it's so perfect, and it shows such an understanding of the character. Because the Doctor, that's all they do. Like, telling them don't think is like, you know... Like
there's a lot of good bits as well, like, that just really plays on, like, their weaknesses, like the don't think thing, also the Donna Salt thing as well, where the other one's, like, second-guessing. It's like, oh, she goes and starts counting them all individually.
Yeah, and the whole thing of Donna does not think she's stupid. She thinks she's brilliant, but also sometimes she does think she's stupid. She thinks two things at the same time. Love that. It's so well done. But yeah, overall, Wobbly on the... I don't think I have much else to add.
No, it's just very good overall. It's just a very solid script.
Very, very good. Yep. And as I said, I think it makes the 60th as a whole worth it. Just on its own. You know,
I mean, I really like the episode following as well, so...
I do as well. But overall... should we do number for this? Because I said 7 for the last one.
Oh yeah, I guess.
I'll give you my number.
I'd probably give this like a 9.5.
Yeah,
maybe a 9.
Yeah, like, I think a 9 just because I think maybe just with the CG and like the opening scene just doesn't quite do it for me, but it's very close.
Yeah.
It was like minor things. It's just barely off a 10. You know, cut those out and you'd probably get a 10. But anyway, yeah, 9.5, looking good. Hello, my friends. It's the giggle, yeah. We're talking about the giggle now. I wish I had my costume. I'm still waiting on it. My toy maker costume. And that would have been.
That would have been perfect. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that would be so good. Anyway, yeah, the giggle and the big finale one. And I'm just gonna get straight to the point. This one, I enjoy it each time more. Every time I watch it.
Yeah, because you were quite unsure about it when you first watched, if I remember.
Well, I think I was unsure how to feel about the ending because it was
such a big departure from what we were so prone to.
You know, what regenerations were, and I remember seeing that leak and going, oh, don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know how I feel about that.
What?
In hindsight, I think on a character level, the more I've thought about it, the more it makes sense, and the more I quite like it.
The thing is, having read the leak, I was pleasantly surprised about how they done it. Or at least, I think in execution, I was like, I actually quite like this. I like what they've done. So, I've always really liked this one. Right from the offset.
It's grown on me with each time I've watched it.
I think I think that first 40 minutes is so strong, and then I can't hate the last 20 because I think from the catch scene, it's just so fun. As soon as Shooty shows up, you're like, okay. He's bringing energy.
Mention that briefly. I don't think there's been a better showcase for a Doctor in terms of just distilling them in that short span of time.
Yeah.
As there has been this, in the sense of obviously with most
there's a spider. There's a fucking guest.
I can't see it. Oh my god!
A fucking spider warring on. Oh no!
You want Meta B list 3? That's a little reference. Ooh.
Being attacked, bro.
I can't actually see it.
Oh, I think it's off camera now. It's lowered down.
Anyway, what were we saying? Yeah, no, the first 40 minutes is great. And I want to say as well, I think what I like about it is the whole Bigen thing. It works as such a good showpiece for Gatwa. In the sense of, with most regenerations, they just get 2 seconds of being what's happening? And that's it. With this, you actually get to see a bit of the personality. You know, he's a bit cheeky, he's a bit flirty, but he's also a lot more emotionally mature than any Doctor we've seen previously.
Yeah. Because I've seen a lot of people say that, this regeneration Tennant completely overshadows, Shooty's first moment.
I completely disagree.
Yeah, I completely disagree as well. I think, if anything, Shooty outshines Tennant as soon as he turns up.
I think as soon as Gat was on screen, he takes command.
I think, he shows far more authority as well. But
which is what he's supposed to. He's supposed to be the reassuring voice for Tennant. To be everything's going to be alright.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it works like that. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about sort of the first 40 minutes.
Of course. Yeah, we sort of jumped to the...
alluded to it. I think it's fantastic. I think the usage of Stooky Bell as... just fundamentally, the idea of creepy puppet is the first thing ever broadcast on TV is just inherently ripe for a Doctor Who idea. So much so that I'm surprised it's not been done before.
I think the whole TV angle and hidden message was a really good route to go down with this.
I've seen some people criticise that it doesn't really connect with the Toymaker aspect of the story, which I personally disagree with, because I think the whole idea is that screens and the internet and television, that's the greatest game of all.
Yeah.
The game of fiction and the game of what's the TV saying, what's the TV making you think. TV plays with you. In a way. Yeah. And I think that's what they were getting towards, and it's kind of shown visually through the form of the puppet. I think it's supposed to be a metaphor for how TV can influence people. You even get, sort of that, explicitly with the Trinity Wells, I am anti-Z-Dex. The idea that we're puppets of television, I think it works. Fine, and they even say in the story, the puppet's just a puppet, we're looking for the puppeteer.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it from that angle, but you're completely right.
So when people say, the Toymaker stuff and the Stooky Bill TV stuff feels totally separate, I'm like, does it? They feel like they're quite well-suited to me.
Yeah.
And I think the contrast as well, another thing I wanted to say, the contrast of the Toymaker's old-schooly shop with like the modern day, I think really works in kind of showing that contrast as well.
I think all the set design for this episode is gorgeous. Like, I love the Toymaker's realm, his shop, like the amount of detail that's gone into that.
The unit set's great too, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Vlinks is there.
Yeah, he's there.
I don't mind.
He's just a little guy.
I know people like, why is he there? And I'm like, I'm sure they're gonna.
They'll definitely just. I mean, I'm pretty sure Russell's already said like he has a new design in season 1.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, one thing I want to say, just I gotta get it off my chest. Neil Patrick Harris, Toymaker, I love him. He's one of my favorite villains of recent years. I love this idea of someone who just exists beyond any form of like rationale or good or evil or whatever, who just wants to have fun and but has the power of like above a god to just do whatever he wants. But he's like, he doesn't see things through the mind of an adult, he sees things through the mind of a child. So to him, high stakes things are just games. You know, the idea of life or death doesn't apply to him, because that's not something he can experience personally. Which is why he enjoys the game so much, because for him, obviously there are consequences if he loses, but he's never going to die. Do you know what I mean? He can't, and that's the biggest, threat to a mortal person of all, is death.
Yeah.
And he can't have that. So for him, he likes the idea of playing with other people. And I really like it. I mean, I think just this idea that, like, he's just so alone, but he needs to create things to amuse him. It's such a Doctor Who, it's like a masterclass of a concept. And, like, the fact that, again, it took this long for the Toymaker to make it into the modern show is already...
Have you experienced the original Toymaker story, just out of interest?
I've only seen
the
existing part 4. But I know that there is an animation coming out, which I'll probably watch. Just so and maybe we'll do a podcast on that.
I've seen a few fan animations on YouTube as well.
What I will say is, from what I've heard, the Toymaker does a lot less in it. He's more just sort of there. But I think what they've done so brilliantly with this is that they've taken the concept of the Toymaker and just turned it up to...
Oh, yeah. This is like the Toymaker if you had a budget to
I feel
actually
like
do
is the Toymaker,
a lot of those things.
This is the Toymaker fans always imagine in their heads when they talk about the Toymaker. Rather than the Toymaker that was actually there. You know what I mean? And I've seen people criticize the whole like German basically it's established that like the Toymaker is a racist. It's kind of a play on the original Celestial Toymaker story. What I like about that is that in my head people will be like, why would the intergalactic being be racist? It's like, well, he knows that it pushes humanity's buttons. So that's exactly why he does it. Again, it's just a form of game to him. But maybe I'll be German now, or maybe I'll be, maybe I'll be an American guy. That's all right then. It's like, it's just a costume. It's just a game. It's a facade, and I think it works perfectly fine. And I think Neil Patrick Harris just nails this role. I cannot stress enough how perfect I think he was cast for this. Genuinely one of my favourite villain performances we've had in years. I love it to death. I mean, one of my favourite scenes in this is the companion puppet show.
Oh yeah, that's so good. Where
he's just mocking the Doctor over all his companions' deaths, which again just hammers home the idea that the Doctor is just constantly followed by death and grief, and no matter how much he tries to rationalise it, that's still what it is. I also choose to interpret that as a little bit of a knowing look at Stephen Moffat, and a little bit of a knowing little tease of like, yeah, you say they're all right afterwards, but are they? Like, which I liked as a little gag as well. I think the Toymaker is just incredible. I mean, the spice up your life sequence. I mean, my God, just incredible. I'd argue that's the best utilization of music in this new era. I mean, I don't mind the Goldwood song. But there's something about the spice up your life scene that just works. Like the idea.
Yeah, I think how it's shot as well, how it's edited, like him spinning people out of control.
The
idea
and stuff. That you're like seeing him just be completely unchained.
Yeah,
and unchained by anything. Like he's popping through the doors, he's turning bullets into confetti.
Yeah,
he's turning the unit soldiers into empty balls with their with their like faces that scream. It's like a visual treat in that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's a way of like showing the Toymaker's power without doing too much. It's like, if you could just show that all in one scene.
Like, don't get me wrong, I would love to see more, but I understand why for budget reasons, like, we don't have more of it. But I think what they do is very effective, not only in that scene, but also in the realm itself. Obviously, you have the Charles, I think it's Charles Babbage. I say that because I've listened to the audio version of this recently, when I'll be covering that in another video on the main channel. But the scene with him where he's wrapped up as a puppet, and when he's getting, controlled by the Toymaker in the sky, like, whenever he commands, I dance and I prance and I must never go back. Like, that's some great imagery. Just the idea of him being stuck as a puppet forever.
Yeah.
Like, which would be a horrible existence. And then the scene with Donna as well, where she gets ambushed by the Stookies, is also great. And it's like the sort of imagery you'd want out of a Toymaker story.
Yeah, it's like classic horror shit.
She follows along with the rhyming.
Yeah.
The line, "Hello, Stookie, my name's Donna, now I think that you're a goner," has been stuck in my head since.
It was iconic.
We watched this. It's great. Yeah, I love the Toymaker to death. I think he's absolutely incredible. One other thing I wanted to highlight as well, the way the giggle affects people. I love when they turn off Kate's Z-Dex, and you see her unfiltered thoughts without, going through basic human filtering that we all do, She's just suspicious of everyone, which kind of makes sense for, a unit person to be that way. Even her closest friend, but I love what they did with her and Shirley, because they basically predicted exactly how people were going to react to Shirley with the "I've seen you walking, don't deny it."
Yeah.
That literally happened after the Star Beast aired, so
she crossed her legs. To them. People were like, what?
Kudos to Russell for just, picking up on that before it was even a thing. Years before this would air, he knew that some people would do that, and showing Kate doing that, not because she's evil, but because we all have our own internal biases, and the Z-Dex just has us say them out loud without, any filter. It's such a good, clever way of exploring that. Really liked that. I just realised we haven't actually spoken about Mel at all in
To be fair, right, she doesn't actually do much in this episode. It's like, I feel like they're setting her up for, bigger things to come.
She's a fun
I like their inclusion.
And I like the running gag of she got a lift off a Zingo. We don't know what that is, but it's fun. But yeah, no, she's a fun presence. And I do like how, sort of in a metatextual way, when the 14th Doctor regenerates, you have a classic companion and a modern companion by his side.
Yeah.
Enters this new era. That's quite nice. And
they've done more with her than they did with Ace and Tegan.
Yeah. I like that it's one that wouldn't normally get the spotlight as well, because Mel isn't a particularly beloved companion in the same way as particularly a Sarah Jane or an Ace is. And I like that they expand on her computer work. They do some good stuff there, but I think you're right in the sense that the bulk of what we're going to see of her is, Series 14, Season 1, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything else I want to mention. There's so many scenes I like in this. I mean, just
I think there's
lines in general.
Yeah. How do you feel about, I know a general criticism of the giggle overall is how much we actually focused on the giggle itself, the outside interference, the world.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind a couple more scenes of showing how it affects everything. I do think as well, the fact
that would have been a really good way. I think that would have been a really good way to add, include Donna's family into the mix a bit more.
Yes.
Is if you saw from their perspective.
Them seeing everyone going around. Or even if you just had, after the Toymakers defeated, just sort of a quick shot of humanity returning to normal and sort of apologising to each other and stuff like that. Just to make the event feel a bit more real, because as it is...
Because there would be chaos after that. Just on that little scene we see, when we first see Wilf, they're planes flying in control, people being battered with pans.
Yeah. One thing I will say in the novelisation is they have this really funny line that because this is Britain, everyone just sort of stands there and awkwardly apologises to each other. It's and then the traffic starts back up again. It's that's probably how it would work. which I thought was funny. But yeah, no, I do agree. I'd like to have seen the aftermath of it a bit more because that doesn't really get addressed, which is a similar criticism we had with the Star Beast. And I wouldn't mind a couple more scenes, but it's not a deal breaker for me that they're not there. It's like I would have liked
I think
it.
It's like it's very obvious they're focusing on this stuff that is going on, but this is the more important stuff.
Yeah.
You're gonna have.
I think with a story like this, because it has to do so much.
Yeah.
It's basically the finale to the 60th, kind of wrapping up the new Who Doctor and introducing a new era. It's got a lot to do in that time, and
I think this is a lot better paced.
And reintroduce Mel.
Something like the Star Beast that I think has similar things to set up and
or
pay off.
For a more direct comparison, Power of the Doctor, which has more time, and yet still feels more rushed somehow. In my opinion, at least.
Yeah,
I think this feels a lot better paced.
This seems like there's a lot more direction though. I feel like from the offset, you kind of know where you're going or building up to, whereas Power of the Doctor just sort of.
Having said that, I wouldn't mind a 90-minute version of this. I would have quite liked that quite a bit. I know we spoke briefly about the Bigen. We'll come back to that, but the ball catching scene, I know you quite like it. For me, I do find it a bit of an anticlimax, personally.
I get that. Think it just... I never minded it, because I think it just comes out of naivety from, the Toymaker in general. When he first gets himself into that game, he's already a bit annoyed. He was more thinking with his feelings as opposed with his head. And
he can't say no to any game either.
Yeah,
so,
you also said that the book does have a line about it.
Does have him basically being very annoyed that the Doctor doesn't regenerate and bigenerates, and he's like, I didn't sign up for this. He doesn't say that directly, but that's kind of in as many words.
No, I meant the whole thing about him catching the ball.
Oh, yeah. So, in the novelization, they expand on that a bit and say that, they fake the throw to 14, so he thinks 14 has the ball, so when 15 throws it, that's why he gets knocked off guard, because he assumed 14 was the one he had the ball. Which does add a little bit of extra dimension to that scene. And I also just I love that there's so many great lines from the Toymaker in the novelization, because he's the one narrating it. He says something to the effect of, when the Doctors start hugging, oh, back to the fan fiction websites I go. It's some great fun, lines from him.
I need to read it, or get the audiobook.
If you haven't read it or listened to it, I'd recommend. I'm going to be doing a whole video just talking about a couple of little bit differences I noticed, particularly when it comes to regeneration and stuff like that. But yeah,
I can't hate it. I think that scene's so fun. Shooty, it's energy. I think it's just so fun. I can't hate it, even if it is a little bit of a cop out.
Should we address the bigeneration?
I mean, we could.
Because I feel that's the big final thing to add, really. So the Doctor, in case for the three people who've never seen this somehow, at the end of the giggle, the Doctor splits in two rather than the standard change from one to the other, and David Tennant and Ncuti Gatwa split apart from each other, and they are separate entities existing at the same time, and essentially David Tennant's Doctor Who gets to go and live a life with the nobles, while Gatwa takes off in the TARDIS for new adventures. That's basically the crux of it.
The only real criticism I have of this, it's not the bigeneration itself. No, it's how it's explained. I think it's it's not very clearly explained how this has happened, where Shooty really came from, I suppose. How this works for Tennant, because it's sort of implied.
Well, you see, Sean, when a Doctor and a Doctor love each other very much.
Well, no, stop. I mean, it's kind of implied that Tennant goes off and gets better, heals himself, and that's why Shooty is
I know what you're saying.
A lot more confident. But how does that work? Does Tennant die and change? But that also doesn't work, because I think the book said that he just that is just the first scene with Shooty. So it's kind of an odd one. I think that could have been explained a bit better to the audience. I don't mind the TARDIS. I don't mind 14 having a TARDIS. I think that's fine.
I think my one criticism there, my one bugbear there, would be, I feel that it should have been made explicit in the... I think he should have taken the original. I know that it's going to be explored later on that it's the original. And I know that you can argue that, well, bigots are going to make a reason for Gatwa not to be the real Doctor regardless. They did that with Whittaker. But I think just the idea of him getting the second TARDIS, I don't love it. I feel like,
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it has sort of given, fire to bigots to be like, he's not the real Doctor. Shooty Gatwa is Shooty Gatwa. They're doing the whole Miles Morales thing.
But that's the thing, and I can kind of see it being read as he gets the hand-me-down TARDIS. He gets, he doesn't get the real TARDIS, he gets the duplicate, which I know is going to be said in a future episode. That's not the case, but that doesn't matter to some people. They saw what they saw, they're going to think what they think. And I think...
if they had made, a clear, just a clearer stance of, actually, 14 does live out his life, he then does turn into Gatwa. It's the same TARDIS somehow, because timelines, I don't know.
They kind of imply it, because it's they say he's the older Doctor, and stuff like that, so it's kind of implied that he comes after. I wish it had just been a bit more explicit. And I think that would have calmed a lot of fears, I think. And, maybe the idea that TARDIS is the TARDIS for a later point in time, and that's why. But eventually...
Yeah, I think that would have been fine, and then, the timelines, merge or something and become one. I think that just...
Yeah.
That's the thing with, that's one of my biggest criticisms, I think, with Russell generally, is just how he resolves a lot of his finales. We saw it in the Starbeast, we saw it in the Giggle. It was a through line through his original run.
On a character level, I think the bigeneration works perfectly. For the thing that I need, the thing that I really want to work, works in that I think it works for the character, where the character's at and the character's journey.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just the mechanics of it I wish were more defined.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think also Russell's comments doesn't help, elsewhere, where he's actually, during this moment, the whole timeline split, and you're okay.
Yeah, nah.
What does that mean?
I get that, that's just his fan theory, though, so, I think people are that's now canon.
Yeah.
Come on, he said it once.
Yeah.
He said it once in, a commentary. That's not...
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to do that. It doesn't necessarily mean fucking Sylvester McCoy's going to wake up in a hospital somewhere. And be like, what the fuck am I doing here?
If anything, if he did do something like that, it would just cause more complications than anything, because you'd be two doctors fighting over a TARDIS.
It's the sort of thing of, I mean, he also says in the Giggle that originally Stephen was going to be there as a cow. And I don't see anyone seriously suggesting that happened.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're all of a sudden being oh, well, he said it in the commentary, so that means...
Yeah, Russell's been saying a lot of stuff in the commentaries. I'm just what?
But that's just what he does, It's just because, the showrunner says something one time doesn't mean that that's automatically canon. That's not how that works.
Yeah, no.
Well,
I was never saying that. I think it's just... No, I think that didn't help with the already confusing...
I just mean from some people being oh my god, I can't believe Russell made this canon. It's he hasn't, though. He said, one thing of what he thinks could happen, but it doesn't necessarily mean it will.
I really like the line from the Toymaker of him saying, I've made a jigsaw out of your history. I think stuff like that is quite good.
I just saw a topical tweet saying the forced regeneration in Power makes way less sense than the bigeneration, but you're not ready for that conversation. And honestly, I'm inclined to agree on the basis that, realistically, why does Jodie just stay in the dead Rasputin body, or is she in?
It doesn't make sense anyway,
13 body.
The Master becomes the Doctor, but not really, because he's just the Master. Why doesn't he just say that he's the Doctor? Nothing has really changed, other than he's wearing a ridiculous costume.
It would have made way more sense if the Master regenerated into the Jodie Doctor.
Yeah, Jodie, that's evil Jodie. I think that would have been
and vice versa.
A far more interesting premise. Yeah.
And vice versa, so you've got good Sacha Dhawan. That would be much more sense. And it would have also been more interesting. Anyway, I digress. I do agree with this take, though. Based take from @new Doctor Who. Just seen this account.
Rose
But
scroll
yeah,
Twitter when he should be recording.
No, I just saw this on my For You page while we were talking. But yeah, I think the bigeneration on a character level works for me. And I think the idea of the New Who Doctor, the traumatized Doctor, effectively retiring makes sense. Because that's kind of what the Doctors wanted to do for a long time. I mean, 12 wanted to do it. And
it is a little bit funny that Tennant didn't want to go and went, and 14 sort of accepts it, and he's like, "Oh, it's fine. You get to live." You're like, "Okay."
Yeah, no, that is fun. I think what I mean though is just I think the idea of the Doctor wanting to rest has been an established thing, and I mean people saying that 13 was happy to change. It's like, well, yeah, but 13 was holding on to a lot, stuff in her era. It's very. I'm not a big fan of the 13th Doctor character, but one of the things that is, very consistent with her is that she's constantly thinking about things, but she doesn't open up about them at all.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense to me that, she'd be putting on a brave face for the next Doctor, the next incarnation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all those thoughts of the Timeless Child and Flux just went away, with the regen. So I quite like the idea that, after, Capaldi already wanted it, and then on top of the Flux and Timeless Child stuff, the Doctor's gone, yeah, I just need to lie down for a minute. I quite like it. It works.
Yeah.
And it gives Gatwin a fresh start and emotional maturity. I think, and an emotionally mature Doctor, I mean, to a certain degree, the Doctor's more emotionally mature in Classic Who, but in New Who, this is arguably the most emotionally, aware Doctor we've had.
Yeah.
So far.
Probably. Yeah.
He's open emotionally. I mean, we see that in Church on Ruby Road.
He's comforting.
But he's also, he's aware, he's still, he still thinks about his past, but it doesn't define him.
Yeah.
In the same way.
He can still have a bit of sass. He's not I wouldn't say he's rude.
He's not I'm the last of the Time Lords, my planet is gone, the people are dead.
Yeah.
But we've done that. And I'm glad we've sort of used sort of the Flux and the Timeless Child as a vehicle to move on from that characterization of Doctor in a sense.
I agree.
Having Tennant be the final one holding on to that, I think works. Because he was the one who was holding on to the most, arguably. In terms of, because every other Doctor was like, oh, I'm just going to move on. But Tennant didn't, So I think that makes sense. He's the embodiment of the new show is growing up and moving on. And I think it works. And I quite like
it works,
at the end. I like the idea of Mad Auntie Mel and the evil stepmother. My only real issue with that is I worry for the future in the sense of when Rose comes back, which we know she is, because we've seen her in the season 1 trailer. How are you going to square that with the fact that 14 lives down the road?
No, that is true. That is something I thought about.
No matter what they say, I'm always going to be thinking about it. He could just help.
In my head, right, I'm just going to be he's out on he has the TARDIS because he's out on adventures with Donna, and that's why he's not there when there's the next big Earth invasion.
They might say that, but it just sort of makes 14 look like a lazy little git, being like, "Come on, help out."
I guess, but just say he's off. Just say he's off world at that point. We're I don't know. He's on holiday again. He's taking.
To be fair, I guess with the MCU, right? When you're watching I don't know, a Thor movie, you don't get why is Squirrel Girl in this? That you should sort of accept that they're not. So I mean, I guess.
It's just going to be like that. Case. Yeah, I imagine people will forget. It'll be funny if I don't know, Martha shows up at some point. I like the idea that 14's just doing his weekly shop and then just runs into Martha, and she's just what? You didn't even come and say hello. Yeah.
Although I will say, people say, "Oh well, where's Martha's extra tenant?" She didn't want a tenant.
Yeah.
She moved on.
It's she got over that shit. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that wraps up everything, right?
One thing I will say.
Oh yeah, you go on.
I do think there are a little bits of clunk, just overall, that could have been, I guess, smoothed out a little bit.
Or the giggle specifically.
Just overall, I think we probably expected it in the giggle, and I think that was more a solid reasoning for this face coming back. Because I think it's a lot more.
Yes.
I guess.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. It's a lot more wishy-washy in the sense of just, well, maybe it was this, and you're like, come on. I feel like there should have been, like, just say it was the toy maker.
Yeah, no, the whole thing of like, you got the face to come home. It's like,
yeah, that's kind of like in Series 9 where Me's like, actually, I think this is the hybrid, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, I want like an answer. I do. On the one hand, I do like the idea that he got that face to retire. Sort of. It's a bit. Yeah. It's a bit curatory in that sense.
But I like it, but I think when you have stuff like the face coming back, the costume changing, the screwdriver, and none of them get answered, it does sort of leave me a little bit like. Because I remember saying at the time...
You could have at least just said the clothes were the toy makers doing.
Because I remember saying at the time, after Pibber, it's like, oh, it'll be fine, it'll be explained, it'll be toy maker bollocks. Same with the bigeneration. Like, I thought that was going to be far more like toy maker manipulation,
kind of imply that
as opposed to
when,
the laser.
When Gatwa has his myth sort of thing, it's like it's a myth that's not supposed to happen. And he also says like the toy maker's realm is like still lingering and stuff like that.
I do like that they're playing into the more like I guess the more, myths, legends, fairy tale.
I like
type
that
stuff.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot as well. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
well,
I think.
Other than that was about it. I think it would have been. It would have been better to get more. Yeah. Solid answers.
I agree with that.
But overall, really strong.
Do we think it worked? Do we think it brought back the excitement for Doctor Who? Do we think it did its job of like revitalizing interest, of getting you on board? I know you're probably going to watch it regardless, but you know what I mean. Just like, did it get you hyped for the future?
You just have to look at the viewing figures. It definitely did. It definitely got people talking about Doctor Who again. It felt relevant. I saw people speaking about the show that I didn't even know were interested.
Yeah, liked Doctor Who or knew what it was.
Like I know people are being like, it didn't do as well as the 50th, but of course, it was never going to. TV habits have changed. It's like it's not just one
very
like a one-off thing.
Do that well.
Yeah, like,
very few.
Very solid run of episodes.
Definitely, yeah. I think for me, my one thing is I think it's one thing I will say before we wrap up is I think it's underestimated how difficult a job these 3 episodes had. Because not only do they have to celebrate the past of the show as a big anniversary, they also have to be accessible enough to be a relaunch point. But they also can't be the full relaunch point, which is Gatwa either. And also you've got a new audience with Disney watching, so they're in a really weird middle spot where they're not...
It's kind of weird where they're slotted as well, because they're technically not part of, like New Who, like the revival. Yeah. But, like, it's sort of like a conclusion to the revival. To kick off like Gatwa.
They can't go full fan wank. Because if they do, like say for example, Power of the Doctor, they know at that point that mainly only fans are watching at that stage. So they just do whatever they want. Like fine. With this, they know okay, Disney's the new audience. We've got to get them on board with it. Like they've got there's that consideration, but they also if they don't do any fan service or enough people, like, where's David Tennant? Where's Matt Smith? This isn't an anniversary at all, which already sort of happened. So it's a really difficult balancing act to kind of strike, I feel. And I think people have been like, oh, well, Power of the Doctor did it. It's like, well, Power of the Doctor could afford to be as wanky as it was, because by that point, only the hardcore fans will watch.
The thing is, it's also... honest. I think another thing is, Power of the Doctor did it. And that was just like the episode prior. It's like, you don't need this again. Like, I'm glad they took this in a completely different direction. It felt fresh. Honestly, I would have minded like more episodes after watching these.
No, I think one thing I will say is I'd have loved it if this was a 6-episode run. Flux in hindsight.
Like this left me wanting more, which I think is perfect. Perfect for a relaunch.
I agree, but I also think like, hey, I think if this had been 6 episodes, I think you'd have had less people moaning about Wobble Yonder being like a filler because you'd have more time. And I mean, I just really liked seeing these two together again.
I mean, I think the giggle could have benefited from being a two-parter as well.
I agree, and I think 14 for me is like the 10th Doctor perfected. I love him to bits.
He's so good.
Really good characterization all around. David Tennant, stellar performance. Yeah, overall, I'd say these were a success. I guess my only real wish was that obviously we were a bit of a stronger point for Doctor Who, so that, like, I suppose we could have had,
like cinema release or something.
And more merch and stuff like that. And I think I also would have liked. I think in an ideal world, this would have come after, like, Gatwood's first series, so that you could do a bit more. You could be a bit more. I guess, I don't know. You could do a bit more with it, I suppose, because you're not having to think about how do we relaunch this for normal people. Because by that point, you've got your audience are there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose.
But at the same time, I think they did a good job of balancing the two. But overall, I think this worked. I think 60th overall, thumbs up for me.
What would you give the giggle? Just as we were doing little number ratings,
8.
I think I'd give it an
8 out of 10.
Okay,
8
same.
out of 10. Yeah, for me it's 7 for the Starbeast, 9 for Wobbly on, 8 for this. So overall, really solid, really strong first couple of episodes for this new era. We might talk about Church on Rewrote in like a subsequent podcast at some point. I'm sure we will. Maybe we'll do it closer to season 1. I'm not sure what our plans are yet.
Yeah.
But those were our thoughts on the 60th specials. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like. That would be appreciated. Hell yeah. Sonic. The buzz didn't come through on my end. Oh no, now it has. My ears. Oh god, that actually really hurt my ears. Like, I'm sorry. With like the Cybermen in Series 2. It's like ringing in my ear.
Bye.
Alright. Bye everyone. Goodbye.